Today on the BRICS Africa Channel, we're in conversation with Ntsako Maswanganyi, a distinguished leader in human resources, leadership development, and organizational transformation. As the founder and managing director of Ntsumi HR Partners, Ntsako has built a reputation for driving impactful change within organizations across Africa. Her expertise spans strategic HR solutions, talent management, and fostering authentic leadership, making her a trusted advisor to businesses navigating complex challenges. In addition, Nsako's association with legitimate leadership reflects her commitment to ethical, principle-based leadership development, an approach that aligns with Africa's need for sustainable and responsible growth. We explore her journey as an entrepreneur and HR leader, her thoughts on effective leadership, and her vision for transforming workplaces to unleash the potential of people and businesses alike. Ntsako, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the BRICS Africa Channel.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for the honor of the invite. Looking forward to our conversation.
We certainly are looking forward to hearing your story. And let's begin with why you established Ntsumi HR Partners and how has your journey been as an entrepreneur in this space?
Um, Firstly, the inspiration for starting Ntsumi HR Partners, I think it was mainly driven by my passion for my profession. And my profession really revolves around people, which is what drives me. I have a deep desire to see people grow. In my personal capacity, I do tend to dabble in gardening, not for income generating purposes. So for me, I often draw parallels between gardening and just, nurturing talent. And this is the profession that made sense to me. So having been in corporate South Africa for it was close to 20 years at the time that I left in December 2019. I decided to not seek further employment. I felt it was the right time for me to then put all my experiences together and try and help small businesses navigate the challenges that come with trying to grow a business whilst trying to manage people at the same time, because we all know that not everyone gets it right the first time, right? So I felt that I could play a part into at least alleviating that pressure from them of the people management side, because that's my specialty.
So the product is something that you've been involved in all your life, pretty much. So that
Mhm.
aspect of your business, easy to do. I just wonder about the running of a business, the entrepreneurship aspect of it. That must
Mhm.
have come with some lessons for you.
Huge ones that I was never prepared for. So I think I was a bit naive in starting. First thing being, I relied on the reputation that I built in corporate over the years in multiple industries across multiple geographies. I'm like, if I pick up the call or send an email and say, "Hey, I now have a business," people would just jump ship and grab the opportunity to support me. Also, when it comes to family and friends, I have a lot of family and friends that are in business. I've always been the go-to person when they need advice with their HR challenges or their own career challenges. And I thought one person actually said to me, you've given so much, it's your time now to receive. And I took that literally, but it hasn't quite translated. So that would be the one from a support perspective. The second one would be trying to juggle it all, right? So when you're in corporate in HR, you're working for a company, your salary is guaranteed. You sort of know what you need to do on a daily basis within a limited amount of time. On this side of the fence, it's working 24/7, right? It's working for multiple bosses. So this notion of saying I work for myself was a rude wake-up call. I realized, no, I actually work for more people now, and I don't have as much time as I thought I would have. And then maybe the last one is, much as HR is my profession, and I've dealt with a lot of leaders and also managed people in my corporate career. managing people as an entrepreneur or a small business owner is a whole other different ballgame altogether that I had to learn and unlearn and try and adapt my strategies. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I know this is how it works. And I know why I'm trying to teach people this way of doing things, but don't know if it's the generational thing. I was never prepared for managing Gen Zs as well. But yeah, those are the challenges that we adapt and learn from such situations.
So, what advice would you give to people wanting to break into maybe leadership roles and entrepreneurship roles?
I think what we often don't do as entrepreneurs is to make time for our development. And it's similar to HR. Most of the time, HR would be the one sending people on courses, but then we don't even think that we need further development. So it's tempting to start a business and then think that because you've got the technical skills, you just continue and it's business as usual. And then you neglect to develop your leadership skills, your soft skills. Some people, some entrepreneurs haven't fully developed that side. And a large part of what you do has to do with building relationships. It has to do with communicating. You need to network and all of that. And those things require you to have fairly well developed soft skills. So I'd say invest in your own development and just be clear on your mission. I think a lot of people got sidetracked or by there was a time where being an entrepreneur in South Africa was the in thing, right? It seemed like people were becoming instant millionaires. Just make sure that you're mentally prepared for the journey ahead and also surround yourself with support, such as either a business coach or an executive coach. But you need you need an outlet and a sounding board. Don't try and do it alone.
All right, let's start talking a little bit about the work itself. And let's start with how did your association with the legitimate leadership shape your approach to HR and organizational transformation?
So I would say it's twofold. So when I came across the legitimate leadership framework, my first reaction was finally here's a language that distills my usual fluff, HR sometimes or often seen as that fluffy department. We speak fluffy, warm and fuzzy languages, but sometimes it's not the language that the business wants to hear, right? We can't always articulate the rand and cents value and all of that. If I tell you that you need to care for your people, depending on the kind of leader that you are and your own personality, you might just tell me to go jump off a cliff because you think your primary focus as a leader and what's expected of you is to deliver results. So how the hell does caring for a person, help the situation? We're not here for that. So that was the one thing that stood out for me about the legitimate leadership model, because they managed to package all that seemingly simple, universal terms, two simple terms, care and growth, distill that into this is what people are actually looking for in workplaces. So the loyalty, the trust, and the accountability that you are looking for, if you got the care and growth right, meaning you would first have to give that as a leader versus the usual way we are expecting people to give to us. So we're taking from them because we think people are a means to an end that are there to deliver results for us. But the framework really advocates for let's shift the focus from taking to giving and see what happens. Give people the care and growth and watch the magic happen. So in my facilitation and doing that work with legitimate leadership, I rely a lot on my HR experience and my own unique approach to HR. And merging the two just helps me, I guess, have more depth in my delivery when I'm delivering the workshops. And another important piece for me is leadership. Other leadership programs sometimes are too intellectual. And with my using my previous experience, I'm able to bring the voice of the employee into the room, hence enable the transformation in leaders to say, are you aware? Not necessarily in this same words, but I'm able to just bring the voice of the employee in the room and get leaders to think about how they can change how they're leading. So that's, yeah, the influence that legitimate leadership has had on on me, I guess.
So when I started my working career many, many, many decades ago, the
Mm-hmm.
word was personnel manager. And nowadays, you hear different terms over time, people management, human resources management,
Mm-hmm.
human capital. And what it tells me is that there's been a shift, change in the approach to the practice. What have you seen over the decades in this people space? What are we doing more now than it was almost a line function, almost like a foreman in a sense. You fill in forms, certain
Mm.
you did, signed off training.
Yeah.
This, what is it
Mm-hmm.
now in the people space?
So I've also been through that. When I started my career, the lady that was assigned to mentor me was a personnel administrator, which I thought meant payroll, only to hear later that they're actually referring to the whole HR function, and also including a payroll as in that HR function. So we've come from that era, but you'd be shocked to hear how many people today still think that payroll is HR, or what HR does is paying people, which is couldn't be further from the truth. But I do, to answer your question, I find that much as there's been changes in technology and legislation and a whole host of other things, HR trends keep changing year after year. There's been, for me, a slow adaptation of some of these seemingly new ideas. I'll give you an example. This whole notion of remote working, I can still remember reading HR journals 15 years ago, thinking this would be so great. But I guess the environment was not ready. The ground was not fertile for such conversations. You throw it around and it would get dismissed, and you didn't really, have a clear case for why. But you're just consuming these things and reading. And then when it came, it was like suddenly it's a big thing. Lately, we've changed the language that we used to call presentism or disengagement. There's a big buzz about quiet quitting. It is not new. So my thing is, instead of getting fixated on the semantics and all this HR jargon, today we're human capital because we think it means this. Let's just go back to basics. So my view is that format, that Nduna that you're talking about, that approach was somewhat more effective than, right? You could walk across to them and say, I've got this issue, and it got solved on the spot. We had lesser issues. Now we're too academic in how we do, HR, and don't spend enough time connecting to the people. We need surveys to tell us what people are thinking when we're sitting across from them on a daily. Sometimes we don't even know each other's names, but that's another topic for another day. So for me, it's much as there's been, I mean, even the AI, the whole AI thing, it's been how many years? We've been talking about the fourth industrial revolution. So we're very good at, highlighting those things, but when it comes to implementation, where do those conversations take place that actually translate into action?
Let's talk a little bit about retention. What are some of the best retention strategies you think that companies can employ? And I wonder if, we talk often about Gen Zs and a different kind of
Mm.
employee now that no matter what you do,
Mhm.
they're not going to stay. Okay.
So retention for me is one of those areas where I think our solutions always may be informed by trends more than, reality and our understanding of what really drives our people. So back to that Nduna example, right? Where if you're connected to your people, you would know what makes them tick. And I'm not saying cater to each and every person's needs, because this one's going to say, I don't like this kind of chair, or I don't like this color. It's highly impossible for you to meet all those needs. But there's some basics, like I said, with the legitimate leadership model, care, you know, just getting those basics right. Do I greet my people? Can my people talk to me? Do they respect me? And do they feel treated with respect? It's those basics for me. I don't have a textbook answer of what works, because all the textbook things that I've seen don't really work. And I'm saying this because there's also a notion that people leave managers, they don't leave organizations. And it's exactly the same reason why people join organizations. When I look back to all my previous positions, I felt some kind of an alignment or a connection to my line manager that was hiring me. And if when I join the organization and I find that there's suddenly a disconnect between what I perceived this person's leadership or their character to be and how they're showing up, then most likely, that's going to affect my how I show up in that environment. So not to place all the pressure on the leader to be the one that makes the person happy. I also, as an employee, have a responsibility to do my part and show up willing to make a contribution, make that conscious decision that I'm going there to contribute something. I'm not just going there to collect a paycheck. So if the two parties could meet each other halfway from that perspective of just, giving to each other, I think would have better retention in most organizations and loyalty.
I know you've got quite a lot of experience across the continent, and I just wonder what you've observed in terms of
Mhm.
people practice and maybe the kinds of things that we have to do as a continent with our people. Also, understanding that the average age of our employees is much, much younger than the rest of the world. What do we need to do in terms of people practice across the continent for Africa as a continent to fulfill its potential, in your view?
Okay. I think I'll answer it in this way, in terms of what we need to stop doing. And I've experienced this having worked for some multinationals. Yes, there's global best practice, and maybe the rest of the world might know a few things that Africa doesn't know. But the approach of wanting to plug and play what works out there in Europe everywhere across Africa is part of the challenge, right? In Africa, we're about relationship, we're about community, we're about collaboration. Hence, the workplaces are usually quite different, and even the retention things that you were talking about just now, are found to be less of an issue. The issue would be people saying, "I've been here for 10 years, but I'm still in the same position. Where can I go and study?" Also, just helping people to identify credible institutions that they can go and study. But that hunger for knowledge, that hunger for learning, for me has been the one consistent thing that I've experienced in all the different countries that I've worked with in the rest of Africa. And I think that's where our focus needs to be, to borrow from today's language, it's give the people what they want or give the people what they need. And what the people need is, continuous learning, knowledge, keep them abreast of what's happening in the world, but also don't limit their creativity. Give them that freedom to, tailor some of these things to their own environments and trust them that they know better about those environments. They know their people better. I can't, much as I've had to learn about things like legislation and whatnot, I can't claim to be the expert on Zambian legislation more than the person that's on the ground or understands Zambian culture more than them.
So this is the BRICS Africa Channel, and so
Mhm.
we have BRICS nations. And what we know is that there are countries like China, India, that seem to be more productive. And I wonder what that is a function of, and how do we cultivate a culture of productivity on our continent from what you've seen and experienced?
Sorry, I think the culture of productivity is inherent in our people. Our people are inherently hardworking, not lazy. But what gets in the way is sometimes how organizations function or things that we, don't provide them with. So you're in a workplace, you're willing, sometimes people are willing to go the extra mile and they've got all these brilliant ideas, but they keep getting shot down. And that somehow breeds some kind of resentment. For those that are brave enough, they'll end up leaving, but the majority have got families to feed. So they stick around and we end up feeling like, or having this notion that our workplaces here are a lot less productive. So, and as far as the East is concerned, I think it also goes back to their own culture and how they've been raised. So it's a whole different dynamic altogether. We come from a history of, I look at my own family and how my grandfather worked for factories for years in Johannesburg, all the way from Limpopo, and then retired to go and farm, which is what he enjoyed up until the age of 94 when he passed on. So that sense of you need to work hard, or hard work, was instilled in me from back then. And even around me, I saw people just willing to work hard. But if we're going to measure productivity in terms of people need to work 24 hours around the clock, I don't know. I think the Chinese are wired differently, and maybe they've got different setups where people are able to take breaks and whatnot. But I'm more advocating for balance, for lack of a better word, but more healthier, a healthier form of productivity, where you still have a life, where you still have friends, and I'm not saying they don't, where family is a huge part still. They're not neglected because I'm busy being productive at work and building a career. We've seen people pay heavy prices for that, burnout, you name it.
Mm. What do you think are the big trends in HR and leadership for the next decade? What is unfolding? What should we be looking for?
I think just top of mind would be the whole managing or leading the different generations. In my networks, there are a couple of people that also have experienced the challenge of who were not prepared. We don't know how to navigate, managing Gen Zs, and this Gen Alpha that's also going to come or is coming. But I think the focus then needs to shift to us not demonizing them, us trying to understand them. I think we've done enough of these ones don't understand, they don't get it and all of that. But how do we, leverage their strengths and play to that, rather than looking at all the things that they are not aligned with us. Digitization, or just digital literacy overall. I think there's still too much manual intervention of things, and where we do adopt technology, we're just plugging and playing the same manual processes. So I think we probably need to be moving more towards simplifying some of these mundane transactional things, not necessarily just saying, no, we're putting it on an electronic platform or we're implementing a system for it, but just, overhauling or overlooking the whole thing and saying, is this working? Is it not working? Because most of the time, what is taking up the time that we say we don't have to train people and have those one-on-ones with our people is because you'll be surprised how many leaders or managers are sitting behind a desk busy with an Excel spreadsheet. But there is a system that apparently does not interface with the Excel spreadsheet. So you're always having to duplicate, efforts. So those would be my two top of mind, just leading Gen Zs better and trying to understand. And the whole notion of diversity and inclusion, it keeps growing. It's, there's belonging as well, which is a huge thing. And I think also for Gen Zs, that's what they're looking for. but on a human level, we all want to belong, right? Um, so that would be, yeah, my top three.
So I've often also wondered what role HR can play
Mm,
in terms of societal transformation. So we spend
mm,
a lot of our day at work, if not most of our time. And so
mm.
some of the attitudes that we see in society, could we influence in the work time through HR practice?
Think we can. I really think we can, either through the people that we come across in our organization on a daily basis, and somehow hope they pay whatever it is that we're sharing with them, or enlightening them to, that they pay it forward, or just things like your CSI projects that are focused on, uplifting communities in terms of education. Um, I remember back in the day, we used to go to schools and do career exhibitions, and some of the townships that we went to, there were some really bright kids that just didn't know what to study. And then you'd get those that just want to be the next celebrity. There's this DJ that's popular. They all wanted to be like that person. But for the or three that were able to, to connect with, some of them went on to study careers that they'd never thought about in things like agricultural biotech. So I think if HR can play a role either as a fraternity or on an individual level, if each HR person takes it upon themselves to say, this is not just a job for me that I check out of when I leave this office. In my community, there's a school in need. I'm seeing matriculants that don't know what they're going to study. How do I keep them informed in terms of what are the career choices that they could make? Because we're still seeing a lot of youngsters making the wrong career moves. And then we're sitting on this end. Either they go to fly-by-night colleges or they study um, careers that are almost obsolete. They don't really know what to study. They just want to get into a tertiary institution. But we're sitting on the other end trying to recruit and saying there's a shortage of skills.
All right, and then perhaps finally, let's come back to you and where we started.
Mhm.
What's your vision for Ntsumi partners, HR partners going forward? What's your big vision?
My big vision is when I set out to do this work, besides wanting to help the small business owners, um, my one big passion is just sharing knowledge and teaching. So initially when I started, I had this vision of just making it a launching pad for HR graduates that want to build careers in serious careers in corporate, however, do not have the experience. So I wanted to give them an opportunity through internships and then just teach them what I've done, what I've experienced. And that has worked to some extent. With some, they've gone on to have to secure entry-level positions in corporate. It's still early days, but my big dream would be to bring more people through the door than Ntsumi doors, to get a similar kind of experience, and hopefully turn this one day into an academy for HR people, because there's another layer besides just the technical expertise. Once we have the technical expertise, there's this notion of HR deserves a seat at the boardroom table. But then when we get there, we do not know how to speak the language of the business. So I want to bridge that gap between technical skills and business skills for HR people.
Ntsako Maswanganyi, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on the BRICS Africa channel.
Thank you, Peter. It's been an honor.